I can turn into a fish. Chapter 40, Renovation. The girls came down and were stunned by the fancy Land Rover parked by the roadside. All of them looked on awkwardly at the young man leaning against the hood of the car. Thanks for helping. Chu Xian offered, in an attempt to alleviate the awkward atmosphere. No need. Actually, we owe you an apology. Every day you've been bringing us breakfast when you bring things for Xiao Ying, and we don't mention it. Let bygones be bygones, Chu Xian remarked. He took out some more bags from the car and handed them over to Xiao Ying. Siu and the others looked on jealously at the LV bags and the Channel clothes. They never imagined that this loser of an upperclassman could turn out so well. Xiao Ying waved goodbye as the girls came over and divvied up the bags. Chu Xian smiled to himself as he watched them go upstairs. This feeling was much better than showing off or face slapping. Chu Xian sat back in the car and pondered what to do next. He eventually decided on driving over to a realtor agency nearby. After looking through several of the homes available, he chose a 3-bedroom place near Haiqing Standard University. He decided to just rent instead of buying the place outright. Of the 4 million he'd earned, Chu Xian spent 2 million on the car, 700,000 on the fish farm, and a couple 100,000 on stuff for Xiao Ying. Together with his leveling expenses, he had a little more than 1 million remaining. He had some plans for this money, so he couldn't spend too much of it. After settling 3 months' rent, Chu Xian went out to buy some living essentials. As for his old mat and blanket, all in the dumpster. After arranging everything in his new place, Chu Xian hopped back into his car and drove over to the Fengtai fish farms. When he finally reached his farm, Chu Xian looked around and inspected the place carefully. He looked around and made some approximations, and after some consideration, took out his phone and made a call. Zhao Quasi had given him a number for a renovation company and said this was a reliable contact in case Chu Xian wanted to do some refurbishing. Soon, a middle-aged man from the renovation company arrived at the fish farm. Hello, sir. Are you the one who called our company? The middle-aged man asked politely, extending a handshake. Yes. I made the call, Chu Xian replied, taking his hand. I want to do some renovations. Maybe you can help me out? Of course. Not a problem. Our company is very experienced in designing fish farms and shop interiors. Just tell us if you have a specific request and we can draw up a model for you to look at, the man said confidently. Sure. I'll have to trouble you then, Chu Xian said with a nod and lead the man further into the farm. Firstly, I want to fence off this place. It'd be best if you can block it off with some opaque glass. Then I want to fill up the front half of the pool near the entrance and divide the back part into 4 pools. No problem. The man replied. Although Chu Xian's requests were a little odd, there was no trouble in completing everything he asked. This is just for the basic framework. I also want you to separate the front and back halves with some good material and install a door in the middle. Then we can put up some boards and change the front half into a store. Are you familiar with high-class ornamental fish shops? I want that style, and when we're done, I want to install a couple large fish tanks. Okay. Let me open up my computer and I'll get a model for you to look at, the man said with a nod as Chu Xian added weird request after weird request. He opened up his laptop and started fiddling around. Okay, Chu Xian replied and repeated his plans to the middle-aged man. I want the best. Money isn't a problem, but you have to guarantee top quality stuff, Chu Xian emphasized. Of course. The man replied, nodding. Sir, you can relax. We'll deliver the model to you tomorrow and we can go from there. Okay. Right, by the way, can you knock down this house and put up a new one? Chu Xian asked, pointing at Zhao Quasi's old living quarters. The house was small and dilapidated, and the interior was quite small. No problem. We'll get some workers to come in and we can build a new one according to your specifications. The man replied quickly. He already identified Chu Xian as a wealthy second generation who was lavish and generous with his money. Why else would anyone renovate a fish farm so fancily? How long will it take? Chu Xian asked. Around 10 days, but we can guarantee top-notch quality. You'll definitely be satisfied, the man replied. Okay, Chu Xian replied. 10 days wasn't too long. After the man left, Chu Xian looked over his farm again as he imagined what it would look like after all the renovations were finished. He smiled. As he walked around looking at some of the other fish farms in the area, he saw many kinds of fish. There were the common flounders and large yellow croakers, Cynoglossus semilaeviscunders, perches, crabs, jellyfish, Cyanopsocellatus, etc. All kinds of seafood, and they definitely weren't cheap. Some of the workers were feeding fish, and some were netting fish. Chu Xian walked around Fengtai Lake by himself, exploring the place. The lake was very large, and it was separated into many regions by all kinds of netting. These regions were used to raise fish. Farming seafood in the lake was completely different from raising them in an artificial pond. The environment here was much closer to the natural living environment, and both the quality of the taste and the pricing was much higher than any pond-raised fish. After every harvest, there would be at least a couple hundred tons of fish caught and sold from here. The profits were huge. When will I be able to own my farm? Chu Xian thought to himself, looking out at the huge lake with an expectant gaze. After wandering about for a little while more, Chu Xian got into his car and drove to the fish market. Once there, he bought around 300 or 400 goldfish and went back to his small shop. For the next few days, Chu Xian stayed in his shop remolding all the goldfish. During this period, his fish farm was also renovated. In the meantime, Chu Xian kept posting all sorts of goldfish photos and videos on the Fast Hands app, and although he wasn't planning on selling any for the next week or so, he wasn't planning to stop earning money. He created an order form. Online customers could reserve the quantity and type of goldfish they wanted, and he would ship their orders as soon as he got the fish. The method was effective and created the sense that the product was rare and in demand, so you needed to act fast to get it. The results were pretty good, and after a couple days, he'd already gotten 8 orders, each of them were for at least 4 goldfish. After the week passed, Chu Xian opened his shop for business, and he posted on both his Fast Hands page and his WeChat Moments, "Open for business."